yeah, that's where we're heading. So I want to begin by not assuming anything and give some definitions. The first is that the word Islam is the name of the religion. Islam's the name of the religion. The Quran is the main holy book in Islam, but there are other books that they have which they get their beliefs from as well. They're called the Hadith, and they're full of these short stories about Muhammad. Allah is the name of God in Islam, and it's not, the word for God in Arabic is Ilah, and Allah is the name of God. So it's a name in place of Yahweh. So the Quran doesn't know the name Yahweh, and it has a different name for God. It has the name of Allah. Muhammad is the main prophet in Islam, and a Muslim is a follower of the religion. Now, you may be familiar with all of those, but I don't want to assume. I just want to make sure we've got those, because I'm going to be using those terms now for the rest of this study that we have. Now, the goal of this session is to help you understand how Islam prepares Muslims for Christianity. I want you to see how Islam prepares Muslims for Christianity, and how this is both a challenge and an opportunity for Christians. Okay? Now, when it comes to learning about Islam, you may think that I'm going to be telling you lots of details, about the 5 pillars of Islam. So people are often taught about the 5 pillars of Islam when they come to learn about Islam. So the confession of faith, the prayers, the 5 daily prayers, the fasting and feasting during Ramadan, the money to Islamic causes, and the pilgrimage to Mecca. There you go, I remembered them all. So, you may be taught those things, but what I have found is that those types of details actually don't help Christians to understand Islam. Because when it comes to Islam, it's not so much what Islam teaches that a Christian first needs to understand, it's when Islam taught what it did. It's the question of when rather than what. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is, Muhammad died AD 632. Now, that is almost exactly 600 years after Jesus' death and resurrection. 600 years is a long time, isn't it? Think back 600 years in the past, or 600 years in the future. You're talking about a long period of time. What's the consequence of that? Well, the consequence of it is that when you read the Bible, you don't hear about Islam. So if you're reading about Jesus in Jerusalem, guess what? Jesus doesn't talk to Muslims. He talks to Pharisees, Sadducees, Samaritans. He talks to all these other different groups, but he doesn't talk to Muslims. He would today if he was there. When you read the book of Acts and you read about the apostles travelling throughout Syria and up into Turkey and all those places, they never evangelise Muslims, do they? They evangelise other groups, magicians and, I'm trying to remember the other groups now, philosophers and other various groups, but they don't evangelise Muslims, which of course they would do if they were doing it now. What's the result of this? The result of this is that Christians don't learn about Islam or are even encouraged to think about Islam from reading the Bible. So you come to church, you have sermons from the Bible, and Islam as a topic just doesn't come up. Now, the situation is exactly the reverse for Muslims, because 600 years after Jesus, Christianity has travelled throughout the Middle East. It's right down the Arabian Peninsula. It's across North Africa. It's up into Europe. It's along the Silk Road. It's gone up the Nile River, and there's a Christian kingdom in Ethiopia. Christianity, through its missionaries, has gone all over the place. And the result of this is that Muhammad was living around Christian empires, and he was surrounded by Christians. And this shows itself when you read the Quran, because in the Quran, Christianity is a major subject. You are a major subject in the Quran. You are a major subject. There is more information in the Quran, misinformation, wrong information, but there is more discussion of Christianity in the Quran than there is about the 5 pillars. Yet when we normally come to teach Christians about Islam, we teach them the 5 pillars. I'm not saying they aren't important, but I'm saying that's not what you will first encounter when you start talking to a Muslim. What you will first encounter when you start talking to a Muslim is what they learn about Christianity. Because as I said, Christianity is a major subject in the Quran, and so when you meet your Muslim friend or whoever it may be, they've already been instructed about you. They've been taught about you. They've been taught what to say to you because that's what their religion does. Now, what we're going to do now is to quickly go through a series of verses from the Quran so that you can just get a feel for the type of preparation that a Muslim receives in order to speak to you. Let's look at the first of these here. Point A on the notes. They are unbelievers who said, "We killed the Messiah, Jesus the Son of Mary, the messenger of God. But they killed him not, nor crucified him. But so it was made to appear to them. And those who differ about this are full of doubts, with no knowledge but only assumption to follow. For of certainty they killed him not, rather God raised him to himself." Muslims have a doctrine of the cross. Muslims are taught a doctrine of the cross. Now you can see here that, what is it that they're taught? They're taught that it only appeared that Jesus was killed and crucified. Now exactly what that means will vary from Muslim group. The general opinion is that Judas was substituted for Jesus. Now you can see the verses don't say that, but either way, it's not a clear statement of the death of Jesus, is it? It's saying it was just an appearance, whatever that means. So, when you're talking about the death of Jesus to a Muslim, they may push back and say he was never crucified. Let's look at the next verse, point B. They are unbelievers who say God is the third of 3. What do you think that might be referring to? Yeah, the Trinity. So the Quran prepares Muslims for the Trinity. Now, let's read on to see what it says. They are unbelievers who say God is the third of 3. No God is there but one God. The Messiah, son of Mary, was only a messenger. Messengers before him passed away. His mother was just a woman. They both ate food. That is, that they're both mortal. Both Mary and Jesus, they're both mortal. They had to eat food. Now, I hope you can see that Muhammad's view of the Trinity here, and we see this elsewhere in the Quran, is that the Trinity is God, Mary, and Jesus. Okay, because it's talking about the 3. They are unbelievers who say God is the third of 3, and then who does he mention as the other 2? It's Jesus and Mary. So you can see Islam has a very poor understanding of Christianity. It really doesn't understand us at all. It's an outsider's view. However, Islamic leaders have had to take this and go, well, what is it that Christians actually do believe? And so they still reject the correct understanding of the Trinity. But my point is that Islam prepares Muslims for the Trinity and to challenge Christians about it. This verse, of course, also is a denial of the divinity of Jesus, and so it's speaking against the incarnation, and that he's the Son of God, as would be seen in other verses. But just think about this. In these 2 verses, The Quran prepares Muslims for the cross, it prepares them for the Trinity, and it prepares them for the incarnation. They're our unique doctrines, aren't they? They're our big, unique gospel doctrines. And Islam prepares Muslims for them. Let's look at point C. It is not fitting for the merciful to take to himself a son. There is none in the heavens and the earth who will not come to the merciful except as a slave. So it's not just that Jesus is not the Son of God, it's that no one is. God is not Father in Islam. You can come to God only as a slave. Allah is your master and you are his slave. You may well be a loved slave, a slave that he has shown his mercy to, but there is no fatherhood of God. So even outside of the Trinity, the fatherhood of God doesn't exist. Look at point D. It is not possible for this Quran to be produced by other than Allah, but it is a confirmation of what was before it, that is a confirmation of the scriptures before it, that is the Bible, and a detailed explanation of the scripture. Now this verse here is talking about the Bible. So the Quran prepares Muslims for the Bible. And what's it saying? It's saying that the Quran has come, and what does the Quran do? It's a confirmation of the Bible and an explanation of the Bible. So that is, the Quran prepares Muslims on how they are to read the Bible. They're to read it in such a way that it confirms the Quran. They're to read it in such a way that it's an explanation of what's in the Bible. Sorry, I've got my words mixed up there. They're meant to read the Quran so that they're meant to read the Bible in a way that it confirms the Quran, and they're meant to read the Bible and see that the Quran explains it properly for them. So that is, the Quran provides a hermeneutic for Muslims. The word hermeneutic means a way of understanding something properly, how to interpret. And so this means that Muslims are ready to engage with the Bible and to read it and to say, well, you know, the Quran is meant to confirm the Bible, and so if it doesn't, then the problem's with the Bible, right? But my point is, they're prepared for the Bible. They're prepared for the Bible. Again, this is a dreadful way to read the Bible, you know, to say I'm going to read it through my book and pick and choose from my book. It's a dreadful way to do it, but this is what they do. This is the preparation they're given. So let's just see where we're up to at this stage. They're prepared for the cross, the Trinity, the incarnation, the fatherhood of God, how to read the Bible. This is a fair bit of preparation, isn't it? Let's look at point E, where we are going to see romantic preparation. Romantic preparation. Permitted to Muslim men in marriage are the chaste women of the believers, that is Muslim women, and the chaste women of those who have been given the scripture before you, that is Christians and Jews. Muslim men can marry Christian women. Does anyone know a Christian girl who's married a Muslim man? So one up there? No. Yeah, so I was with a group of evangelical students at the end of last year. There was 140 of them. And I asked this question, and in a very strong evangelical group, there were 7 out of 140 who had a friend who had done that. I was actually talking to the leaders of the Fijian Christian group there, the student Christian group. And even within the leadership of the Christian group, there were people who'd converted to Islam to marry someone. You see, because there's this romantic preparation. And the way it works is that the the Muslim man will show interest to the young lady, the young Christian girl, and they tend to have traditional values. That is, they want to get married and have children, right? Which I know sounds ridiculous that that's traditional, but that's not always the case. And so there's something attractive about that. He wants to get married and have children, and he likes me. And then he knows what to say. He goes, we believe in Jesus, just like you do. You cannot be a Christian unless you love Jesus, and we love Jesus. We all believe in the same God. Now, we don't believe in the Trinity, but, can you explain the Trinity to me? And, the young girl goes, I can't. We've never really done that. I believe it, but I don't know how to explain it. You see, Islam's simple. There's just one God. It's simple, right? And so they have 1,400 years experience of how to guide young Christian girls into the Islamic faith through marriage. And unfortunately, I see it in all the places I go. So, romantic preparation. This either deliberately or inadvertently allows Muslims to establish themselves very quickly in new areas. Look at point F. You will certainly find the nearest in friendship to those who believe, and those who believe there is referring to Muslims. So you will certainly find the nearest in friendship to those who believe to be those who say, we are Christians. And so early in Muhammad's life, he was very friendly towards the Christians. He was friendly towards them. In fact, when the Muslims were being persecuted, it was the Christians who gave them sanctuary and took them in as refugees in Ethiopia. And so he's saying at this early stage of his life that the Christians are your friends and that they're nice to us. And that's where most Muslims will want to be, particularly in Western countries. They will want to be your friend, and they want to be friendly with you, as this verse of the Quran says. However, that's not where Muhammad finishes. What I'm going to read now from Surah 9 is Muhammad's Great Commission. It's the last major part of the Quran that he said, and you'll see that his attitude to Christians has changed. The Quran revolves around Muhammad's life, but it also evolves over time around his life. And so it'll say different things at different times, depending upon the situation of his life. And this is the last thing that he said. So let's have a look. Fight those who believe not in God and the last day, and do not forbid what God and his messenger, that is Muhammad, have forbidden. Such men as practice not the religion of truth, being of those who have been given the book, that is, Christians and Jews, until they pay the tribute, that is, the terms of surrender, out of hand and have been humbled. So here is Muhammad's Great Commission to make warfare on people who do not follow Islam. This is his Great Commission. And what I've just said there is how it's worked out in Islamic history. This is precisely what they did for the next sort of 1,000 years. We often, as Christians, don't realise how long the Islamic world ruled the world. We're sort of used to the West being in charge, but we've only been in charge for a very short period of time, only a couple of 100 years. The people who have really controlled most of the world and been in charge has been the Islamic world. We're only the recent people to do it. Now, you might be saying to me, Samuel Green, you're misrepresenting the Quran here, because I've had Islamic speakers come and speak to us and they say that Muslims only fight in self-defense. This is what you will hear. We only fight in self-defense. And so you're saying that this is, go out and fight people in an imperialistic, conquering, set up an empire type way. Well, let's keep reading, because Muhammad gives the reason to fight the Christians and Jews here. So we can see what reason he gives for this warfare. So let's have a look. The Jews say Ezra is the son of God. The Christians say the Messiah is the son of God. That is the utterance of their mouths, conforming with the unbelievers before them. God fight them, how they are perverted. It is he who has sent his messenger with the guidance and the religion of truth, that he may uplift it above every religion. So here we have the reason that you're to fight them. And what is it? Well, it's because Christians say Jesus is the Son of God. That's the reason. Notice what the reason is not. It's not the Christians fought against you. That's not the reason, is it? It's not that the Christians were threatening you. It's that the Christians believe Jesus is the Son. So it's a theological reason that they're to make warfare. It's a religious reason that the teaching of Islam is to be dominant. So, and as I said, that this is exactly what the jihadists did. They conquered the Christian world in the East. I was saying to someone before that one of the reasons why Western Christianity is so prominent in the world and is having such a big impact for Christianity in the world is that we weren't conquered and wiped out by the jihadists. Because if you think about the early church fathers, the significant ones like Augustine in Hippo, that's all Islamic now. That was conquered in the 7th or 8th century. I can't remember exactly when they got to North Africa. So Augustine in Hippo, that's all Islamic. Tertullian in Carthage, that's all Islamic. Athanasius in Alexandria, that's all Islamic. There's no more early church fathers, big theologians coming out of these places from that time on. And so it was the West that then begins to become more significant because we're there, we weren't conquered. So this is actually really important for understanding your history, your Protestant history, and why we're important I would say in a disproportionate way compared to the Eastern Church. Yes, mate.
What's your interpretation of the Crusades? We're told that Muslims reacted to self-defense in that situation.
I want to keep going. I'll just do that very briefly. So, I mean, the Crusades are in response to 400 years of continuous jihad.
Yes.
Like, that's just historically what happened. If you begin the story of the Crusades with the Crusades, you've completely left out the history as to why they happened. So there's 400 years of continuous jihad against Christians that is responded to with the Crusades. Okay, now anyway, I hope you can see there that that's a lot of preparation, isn't it? That's actually a political agenda. That Muslims absolutely want to be your friend. Yes, they want to be your friend. But ultimately, Islam is meant to rule in the long run. However that might come about, it doesn't matter. It might take a couple of 100 years for it to come about. It doesn't matter. We're in it for the long run. And so, just think about the preparation there. Prepared for all of our distinctive doctrines. The cross, the Trinity, the Incarnation. About how to read the Bible. Romantic preparation and a political agenda. I want to suggest to you, that's a lot of preparation. That's a lot of preparation. Now, what about Islam in the Bible? Well, as I said, Islam comes 600 years after Jesus. And so there's no mention of it. It is spoken about in a general way. In a general way. So I'm not saying there's no preparation from the Bible at all. But there's a general way in that Jesus says to watch out for false prophets. And so, we've got that preparation. The Apostle Paul in Galatians says that you need to be careful and to watch out for those people who change the gospel. Galatians chapter 1. Watch out for them. So, we do have got guidance here and instruction on what to do when Islam comes along. But the difference is we actually have to go and learn what Islam is first to figure out if Muhammad is a false prophet. We need to learn what it is first to work out what the gospel is they're preaching. We just don't know it automatically. Some people might say that the story of Abraham is where Islam is in the Bible, but that's just not the case. That they would say that Muhammad comes from Ishmael, and Islam is the Ishmaelite religion. The bottom line is that when God makes his covenant with Abraham, he specifically says in chapters 21 and 22 of Genesis that the covenant goes to Isaac. And so all of Abraham's children were blessed in various ways, but the covenant is specifically said to go to Isaac. And so there's no promise of a prophet coming from the Ishmaelites who's going to, change the gospel or anything like that. Now, what's the result of this? Let's keep moving. Well, the result, I hope you can see, is that Muslims are prepared for Christianity in a way that Christians are not prepared for Islam, because we just learn about each other very differently. Muslims are given very specific information about us, whereas we're given general information about Muslims. And that information, is with Hindus and Buddhists. They're in the other religions of the world. It's just a very general type of thing. And I want to suggest to you that this is actually the most important cultural aspect to understand about Islam. It's not about taking your shoes off. It's not about not eating pork. Those things are important. But I believe the number one cultural difference that we need to understand is that they learn about us and we are a major topic of their discussion. It's actually compulsory for them to learn about us. So you as Christians here, you don't have to learn about Islam to be a mature Christian, do you? You don't have to. But if you're a Muslim, you have to know how to refute Christianity if you want to be a mature Muslim. You have to know that because it's a major subject in the Quran. Now, this difference that we have here, it means that many people in Western countries, for them, Islam is a bit of a mystery. And so it's something that they've got to go out and learn about, or they may never learn about, and so it can be a mystery to them. And this, of course, allows Muslims to say things which may or may not be true. And we're not really in a position to even know the difference because we don't want to be harsh to people. And we want to be accepting, but what are they saying? Is it true? Is it not true? Most Westerners will just accept whatever Muslims say because we believe in sort of multiculturalism and other people, and if someone says this is what they believe, we go, okay, that's what you believe. We just trust them on it. What this also means is that if you meet a Muslim, they may well be prepared to ask you some questions. Some big questions. I do a lot of ministry amongst Hindus, and I've never had a Hindu come up and ask me about the Trinity. Almost every Muslim I've spoken to has asked me about the Trinity. And being asked about the Trinity or the Incarnation is actually a big question, isn't it? That's not a small question. These questions of the cross, of the Trinity, of the Incarnation, if you look back in church history, these things were discussed for long periods of time. And many of us have not practiced these doctrines to a sufficient level to be able to explain them, concisely. And so this, of course, it works for an advantage for Muslims because they can exploit our lack of understanding and our lack of clarity in these areas to create the impression that we don't know what we're talking about. And so you may find that when you start talking to a Muslim that they're asking you these questions and you may feel on the back foot because they ask you really big questions and you don't know what to ask them. Because when you first start meeting them, you're just trying to find out what their faith is. They come to you as if they already know your faith and are asking questions. You're there going, I don't even know the difference between the Quran and the Hadith. I don't know the dates. I don't know anything yet. I'm trying to find out. And so it can be quite disconcerting to find yourself in that situation. Now, whereabouts do we engage Muslims this way? I've had many people say to me, Sam, look, this is all well and good, but in my area there's not many Muslims. And that may well be the truth, that there are not many Muslims living around you. But I want to say your youth are online, and the algorithm, when it finds out that your children or grandchildren are Christian, sooner or later they're going to be seeing testimonies of Christians who have converted to Islam. And so I've had ministers who say, I don't need to know about Islam because there's no Muslims in my area. They live in a rural part of Australia. It's all white farmers and white people. And their children have converted to Islam through online because they spend half their life online. I don't care who lives in your area. You're probably going to know more people through the internet than you do in your area. Like for most young people, they know more people online than they do from their area. So who's in your area? It's almost irrelevant. I'm not saying it's irrelevant, but I'm saying you must consider where young people actually live. And they're online, and there are many famous YouTube influencers who have converted to Islam, and their stories are now very commonly known. Now, I don't want to scare you too much with that, because it can be a bit frightening when you hear all that. But I do want you to understand the context and why you will experience certain things the way you do when you talk about Islam and meet Muslims. You can see that that's a challenge to the church. It's a challenge in a good sense. It's a challenge in a good sense in that in order to prepare, we first of all have to learn our doctrine properly. And that's actually a really good thing. See, Islam is not a distraction. Engaging with Islam is not a distraction, because when you engage with Islam, you need to learn the Trinity. You need to learn how to articulate the incarnation. You need to know about the reliability of the Bible and how to interpret the Bible properly. They're actually really good things. So engaging with Islam, you might think, oh, we don't have time to do that, we want to do other things. I'm going, are those other things making you think about your doctrine of God? Are those other things making you think about your Christology? Are those other things making you think about how to interpret the Bible properly? They may be, but Islam definitely will make you do that. It'll make you learn your own faith. So it's a challenge, but it's a challenge in a good area for us. Because it's going to make us learn our faith. But I want to say, and I don't want to finish by worrying you too much there. I want to say it's an amazing opportunity. It's an amazing opportunity. Why is it an amazing opportunity? Well, because Muslims are meant to learn about Christianity. The door swings both ways. They're meant to learn about Christianity. See, when I talk with Hindus, they may not want to find out about Christianity because they don't have to. You can be a Hindu and not learn about Christianity. That's not part of the Hindu religion to learn about Christianity. When I talk to Buddhists, they may want to talk to me, they may not, because that's up to them, because they don't really have to. Because to be a Buddhist, you don't have to learn about Christianity. That's not part of the religion. But if you're a Muslim, and I come to you and I want to talk about Christianity, they're actually meant to talk about that. Their religion says they're meant to talk to Christians about Christianity. That's actually a really good opportunity, isn't it? And this is the first application. I'll see how I go for time as to how far I'll go today, but this is the main application I want you to get from today, and that is to start a gospel conversation with a Muslim simply requires you to ask them, what have you heard about Christianity? And see where that goes. Now, if you ask just, what have you heard about Christianity? That, from my experience, does not end up being an argument. If you talk about some topics, if you talk about jihad, for instance, or who is Jesus, or something like that, you might find that you start arguing straight away. Whereas if you just say, what have you heard about Christianity? You just get to find out who they are and where they're coming from. So 3 quick examples. I've got an Ethiopian friend from my campus, and I asked him this question shortly after meeting him, and he said to me, you've changed the Bible, Christians have changed the Bible, and Jesus never died on the cross. he was like Jonah in the fish or something. He had it confused, whatever, but I knew where he was going. And I said, okay, thanks for telling me that. I did ask him, I said, have you checked any of this out? And he goes, oh, no, it's just what I've seen on YouTube. I went, okay. But that was really good for me to know that was the background there. I had another Muslim that I asked that question to, and he said to me, I know nothing about it. My parents aren't practicing Muslims, and I know nothing about Christianity. Now that was actually really good for me to know. And so he was at our church, and we read the Bible with him for about 6 weeks. It was really good. So this is the question, this is the way I'm suggesting that you start a conversation with a Muslim. If you want to start a gospel conversation, is just simply ask them, what have you heard about Christianity? And then listen to them. Now the reason why I say that is, because Islam's not in the Bible, I don't want to give you a question that requires you to know about Islam to start a conversation. I want you to have a question that you're already prepared for. And asking about Christianity is something you can do. You can just say, what have you heard about Christianity? And listen to where they're coming from. Now, I've still got 10 minutes, so I will take up the rest of this time here. Now, what do you do after that? So you meet your Muslim friend and you say, what have you heard about Christianity? And they tell you whatever they're going to say. And you say, okay, after that you can say to them, can I show you one thing about Christianity? Can I show you one thing? And to date, I've always had them say, yeah, sure, you can tell me one thing. I've listened to them, I've listened to what they've got to say, and I say, can I show you one thing? Now, what is this one thing? And this is the second part of the notes that you've got there. This one thing is I want to show them what books are in the Bible. I want to show them what books are in the Bible. Now, why would I want to show them what books are in the Bible? Well, it's because one of the significant beliefs in Islam is that Muslims are to believe in all of the prophets. And so you may have heard a Muslim say to you, we believe in Jesus. In fact, we believe in all of the prophets. We accept all the prophets and make no distinction among them. And so believing in all of the prophets is a core belief of Islam, and it's something that they would genuinely believe that they do. That they believe in all the prophets. So, with that in mind, why do I want to show them what's in the Bible? Well, let's have a look at the Quran first. What is the Quran? The Quran is a collection of what Muhammad recited over about a 23-year period. Over about 23 years. And he claimed that it came from God through the angel Gabriel and other angels. And so that is, the Quran is just one man. The Quran is just one man telling you what to believe about the prophets. It has stories of Moses and Jesus in it. But the Quran does not have the book of Isaiah in it. It does not have the book of Genesis in it. It doesn't have the Psalms in it. It only has what Muhammad said. And you need to understand this, that Islam is a religion totally based on one man and what that one man says to believe about everybody else. So when Muslims say to you, we believe in Moses, what they mean is they believe everything Muhammad tells them about Moses. They don't read the law of Moses themselves. They don't read Genesis, Exodus. They don't read the books of Moses. They listen to what Muhammad says about Moses. When they say they believe in David, what they mean is they believe everything Muhammad tells them about David. When they say they believe in Jesus, what they mean is they believe everything Muhammad tells them about Jesus. So I hope you can see that Muslims actually don't believe the prophets. What they believe is what Muhammad says about the prophets. I'll come back, I've almost finished, I'll get up to you there. So I hope you can see that Muslims believe Muhammad and what he says about the prophets. Are people familiar with the Baha'i religion? Baha'i religion. So it comes after Islam. And in the Baha'i religion, they believe all the prophets. You cannot be a Baha'i unless you believe in all the prophets. So Baha'is believe in Moses, they believe in David, they believe in Jesus, they believe in Muhammad. But they only believe what their prophet, Baha'i Allah, says about Muhammad. They only believe in what their prophet, Baha'i Allah, says about Jesus, says about Moses, says about anybody. Now, Islam is not like Christianity. Islam is like the Baha'i religion. It's based on one man telling you what to believe about everyone else. Now, what about Christianity? What type of religion is Christianity? Well, Christianity is nothing like Islam. Because what is the Bible? The Bible's not one book. It's a collection of many books from many prophets over about a 1,500-year period. And Christians don't really have any one person telling us how to interpret these books. We just read them all together. So when Christians say they believe Moses, they read the books of Moses. When Christians say they believe Isaiah, they read the book of Isaiah. When they say they read Ezekiel, they read the book of Ezekiel. It's actually quite difficult being a Christian, isn't it? Having to read all these books. Because it's hard work. Wouldn't it be much easier if we just had one man telling us what to believe? But you know what? This is what Islam's asking you to do. When Muslims are talking to you, what they're asking you to do is this. They're saying to you, stop reading the prophets yourself. So imagine if this morning when I was preaching here, I got up the front and I said, I don't want you reading any of the prophets anymore. I will tell you what they mean from now on. This is what Islam does. This is what Islam does. You need to understand what this religion does. And when people convert to Islam, they stop reading the prophets and they just listen to one man tell them what the prophets mean. Now, I'm going to get back to my question. I've said to a Muslim, what have you heard about Christianity? I listen to them, I find out where they're coming from. I say, can I show you one thing? I want to show you what books are in the Bible. And my first Bible study with a Muslim is the table of contents of the Bible. For many Christians, it's the page of shame. Right? You know, you've got to go, where's Zephaniah? Let no one see me looking it up. It's actually a great place to have a Bible study because the table of contents shows you that we believe in all the prophets. And I need to finish up quickly. But when I talk to Muslims, I will go to the table of contents and I will show them the different prophets and show them the books of the prophets and say, here's Jonah, here's the book of Jonah. Here's Job in the table of contents, here's the book of Job. And I show them how we read and teach all the prophets. And then I point out how the Bible's different to the Quran. So do you see how our books are different? You just have one man that you listen to. I know you say he's speaking the word of God, but it's still just one man, isn't it? Do you see how our religions are different? I read all of the prophets. You listen to one man. And that's how I introduce the gospel to a Muslim. I explain what the Bible is, that it's all of the prophets. I explain that it's different to the Quran, and then from there, I invite them to do Bible studies or something with me. Now, I've got 1 minute left, so I'm going to finish up there very quickly. There's a question up the back, and no. So, were there any questions? We might just do it very quickly, because I know we've got a timetable as well. So, yes, sir.
I've read in a few places that Muhammad was unable to read and write. And if that's the case, how do we know what was written in the Quran is what he actually said?
Well, that is a very good question. You are right. The common Islamic teaching is that Muhammad was illiterate and unable to read and write. We have within the stories of his life that the Christians and Jews would recite their scriptures in one language and translate it into Arabic. So they were hearing the stories of the Bible. He's hearing them in his language. And you're right, when he would speak, others would write it down. And so there's that gap there. How do we know it's exactly the same? In the end, we don't. I might finish right there because that's exactly 45 minutes. So thank you.